Good afternoon on what is a cold, grey and cloudy day. It is Tuesday, November the 29th. I'm back in the reading Nook with a nice little cup of tea. And a cat who is not ours. And a parcel to unbox. So let's find out what is in here. So fairly stiffly. Okay, so this is it's another drive-through heavily glued special. What I've got in here is these two. Now, I'm not going to do an unboxing of this. I've already done an unboxing of this, I'm pretty much sure. But this is Grognard Ruminations on 40 Years in Gaming, the collected writings of the late Lauren Wiseman. And this is a gift for a friend, as is this, which is the science fiction in Traveller, a reader's guide to Traveller role-playing fiction by Shannon Appelcline. Now, Shannon Appelcline, you will a name you probably recognise from the Designers and Dragons columns from RPGNet. If you've not seen those, do recommend you go and read those, as providing detailed histories of various role-playing companies, and also the collected work volumes he has written over the past few years, which have sort of covered the 70s, 80s, 90s, and noughties. Basically, one volume per decade, covering the history of role-playing companies and publishers and role-playing games themselves. So, but this is his history of Traveller fiction. So, award-winning reviewer Shannon Appelcline, Designers and Dragons, investigates the science fiction literature that shaped the structure and content of the Traveller science fiction role-playing game. He reviews and discusses the broad expanse of SF that influenced Mark Miller as he designed the massive background universe of Traveller, and then gives equal consideration to the novels and short stories that were inspired by Traveller. So it's going back and forth between sort of like, here's the fiction that inspired it, and here's the fiction that it inspired. Now, Traveller itself is essentially the world's longest running role-playing science fiction setting and system, originally published in 1977 by Game Designers Workshop. And as the game developed, it built up its own setting, the Third Imperium, sort of set sort of like 5,000 years from now, across sort of like innumerable parsecs and sectors of space, and gave a fantastic sort of like environment for you to go adventuring in, whether that was performing mercenary missions or trading, or just sort of going from one world to another, getting by, getting involved in secret missions and that sort of thing, or even piracy. There's a campaign called Pirates of Drenax, which is excellent. And it basically it has gone through various publishers, and it has sort of developed over various editions, numerous editions over the years. Covering going from the original 2d6 system, which has now come back in the form of the Cepheus system, which is the OGL, and then of course we've got Mongoose second edition, which is actually a really nicely done iteration of the game. But there's been versions for GURPS and the D20 system, and even a Hero system over the years. So we start off with I'll get the introduction. I'll show you the page of contents. You can just see that. So this is sort of falls into what sort of like one of those sort of generally sort of like semi-scholarly works that and they're not quite something. I mean, you've got writers like John Peterson and Ben Riggs doing sort of like history of like TSR with the game Wizards, and then Slaying the Dragon. This is looking at sort of like one particular game and its aspect, but again, it's a study. And if you've got an interest in science fiction, then I think this would be worth tracking down, especially if you've got an interest, if you like Traveller as a setting and you want to have a look at his influences. Then this is probably a good choice for you. And it's also sort of like a selection of, here are some books you might like to read as well. I mean, it's all going to be older science fiction, really kind of dating from the 40s and 50s onwards, in part because, that's when Mark Millar, the designer of Traveller, was his formative years of reading science fiction. So that's what he grew up, and that's what he's primarily drawing from, because it's the imperial style of science fiction where you have empires in space and they are competing or even battling against each other. So for example, let's have a look. Let's have a look at one of the most famous ones is Space Viking by H.B. Piper. There we go. Ratings for style and traveller substance, and then the genre and style, as well as an indication of essentially the first publication where it appeared, in this case, which is Analog, which is an important science fiction magazine. And then we have a notes on adaptability to traveller role play. How can you take that concept directly from the book and bring it to the game? Publication notes, and then at the end we have a short list of additional writings in the same genre or similar fiction. So it's doing that again and again over time, and a lot of this is new to me. First one, Dorsai. No, I have read that one. My problem is I read too many role-playing games to read a lot of fiction, and I keep meaning to get back into it. And then we have Retief's Piece by basically interesting by William H. Keith. And this is one of the books presumably influenced by it. William H. Keith is best known for working with his brother Andrew Keith, not just on a range of fiction. A lot of it for BattleTech. Some of his BattleTech fiction is great, really enjoyable, but also for contributing to the background of Traveller itself with innumerable supplements and scenarios. So it's a big name in the Traveller community. Let me flip through and just show you some more, because I've got the cat who is not ours decided to come back because he's cold. Then Hammer Slammers. I know he's gone off again. He's on the prowl. And then a bit of a gap. And this is beginning to talk about travel novels in particular. And it's talking about the fiction here, just some of the initial fiction. In some ways it's getting slightly obscure. This stuff here I've never heard of. But that's one of the joys of a book like this, because it's making you go, oh, I didn't know about that. I'm going to go look that up, see whether it's any good. Give you things to read about and track down, and expand your traveller knowledge in a way. So yes, Jefferson P. Swycaffer has written an awful lot of traveller influenced fiction. Let's see whether I can find that there is. Then we get on to the new era, which was 1995 to 2011. This is actually when there was sort of like a flowering of traveller fiction. As far as I recall, so you even have actual traveller novels written to coincide with the Traveller New Era system, which was essentially the period of Traveller of the setting's recovery after a great civil war had destroyed it. Now these are quite readable. I read some of them; they're quite enjoyable, and certainly probably they're easily accessible. I think you can purchase them online. So yeah. And then stuff I haven't seen. And then we get on to the works of Martin J. Doherty. If you're into Traveller, you'll recognise his name, although he's an author of other many books. Also a fencing. He's also a fencing expert as well, and he writes great adventures for Traveller. He knows the setting, he likes the setting, and it really shines through. And then we've got we've got an anthology. Again, I didn't know about this one, but again, this will be dating back to the noughties with the D20 system era version of Traveller. And again, more Traveller inspired fiction. So there's lots of it. Interestingly, Fate of the Kinnear, most interesting sort of like is it potentially a story adaptation of the original scenario, basically built drawing upon the Kinnear, which is a giant 1800 merchant cruiser, and it's basically that's one of the scenarios that Mongoose has updated, and that's quite an entertaining scenario. Then we have Agent Imperium, which is Mark Miller's own fiction. That's a really enjoyable book, actually. It's really nicely captures the flow and feel of the Traveller setting over the years. And then we've got things like short fiction from the magazines or the fanzines over the years, because Traveller has had its own fanzines as well. So yeah, this I think more from Martin J. Doherty. So this is something you really kind of want. If you're a Traveller fan, you've got an appendix, you've got a timeline at the end there, which is putting the essentially all the stories in chronological order. You've got inspirational reader, more references and so on at the end, which covers magazines and other authors, and then of course you've got the author's own bibliography at the back, and further contact details and so on at the end. So, is this any good? I think this is going to be an interesting little book to read. If you're a Traveller fan, you definitely want to have this. If you're interested in sort of like science fiction and how that's influenced role playing, it's going to be interesting. And if you're interested in role playing history, it's one of those books which is just sort of like it's adjacent to that history. It's an influence on and influence upon other things. So yes, it's not a core history, but it is adjacent to it. So yeah, I think it's an interesting addition to anybody, to the library of anybody who has an interest in sort of like role-playing games and their history. So yeah, that's the Science Fiction in Traveller by Shannon Appelcline, a reader's guide to Traveller role-playing fiction. Anyway, thank you very much for watching another unboxing in the Nook. If you've enjoyed this, then please do click on the like button down below. And of course, if you've got any comments or feedback, I do appreciate you taking the time to post those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to yet more unboxings in the Nook, where you'll see me out here with a parcel containing a book, or game in this case, a book about gaming, which I will extract, I will unbox and talk about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea. Then please do hit that subscribe button down below. Thanks again for watching another unboxing in the Nook. I'll be back again soon with another one. Bye for now.